The fire is already lit. Sit down, breathe, and listen. You've lived this moment, haven't you? That precise instant when you finally see through someone's mask. When the patterns become obvious. When the manipulations become transparent. When you realize that for months, maybe years, you were just a piece in another person's psychological game. And then something happens that you didn't expect. They know that you know. It wasn't something you said. It was something that changed in your gaze, in the way you respond, in how you no longer react the way they expected. That night, Jung revealed something that would change everything about how we understand toxic people. There's one specific thing they do when they realize they've lost psychological control over you. Jung discovered that this isn't a random reaction. It's a calculated strategy, a desperate last resort that manipulators use when they sense they've been unmasked. And if you don't know how to recognize this strategy, it can destroy not only your peace of mind, but your very perception of reality. Because this one thing is the most powerful weapon in a toxic person's arsenal. And today, you're going to learn exactly what it is and how to protect yourself from it. Jung said, "Everything unconscious seeks to become conscious, and everything that becomes conscious changes the power dynamic." Here's what Jung discovered. There's a specific moment when toxic people realize you've decoded them. It's not when you confront them, it's when you stop reacting. When you no longer apologize for things you didn't do. When you no longer explain yourself, when they distort your words, when you simply stay silent and observe. This silence terrifies them because it reveals they've lost narrative control over you. According to Jung, this triggers what he called narcissistic panic, an automatic, desperate reaction when the manipulator realizes their source of emotional supply is disconnecting. They feel this viscerally, like an animal senses danger. It's not rational, it's primitive. Your clarity about them becomes an existential threat to their identity. Because if you can see them clearly, it means their mask isn't as perfect as they thought it was. And if the mask is imperfect, maybe they're not who they thought they were. Jung realized something disturbing. Toxic people develop an almost supernatural ability to detect when someone is awakening to their manipulations. They sense it in the energy. They see it in micro-expressions. They perceive it in how you process the information they give you. It's as if they have an internal radar calibrated to detect any threat to their psychological control. And the moment that radar fires, the moment they realize you're no longer the same, they activate the emergency protocol. Jung said, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time." But what happens when they realize you finally believed them? Here's where Jung made a shocking discovery. Toxic people don't try to deny or hide their behaviors when they're discovered. They do something much more sinister. They rewrite the entire story to make you the villain. This isn't an emotional reaction. It's a sophisticated psychological strategy that Jung identified as projective narrative inversion.
According to Jung, this works through a specific process. They take every moment of clarity you had about them and transform it into evidence of your own toxicity. You stopped reacting to their dramas. You've become cold and distant. You established boundaries. You've become selfish and insensitive. You questioned their versions. You're being paranoid and controlling. Every sign of your sanity becomes proof of your insanity. But here's where it gets really twisted. Jung discovered that they don't just do this externally, they do this inside their own heads. They need to rewrite the narrative for themselves, because the alternative, accepting that they're toxic, is intolerable to their ego. So they genuinely convince themselves that you're the problem. And the more convincing they are to themselves, the more convincing they become to others. Jung called this projective self-gaslighting. They deceive themselves so they can deceive you better. Jung said, the most dangerous lie is one that contains 90% truth. And here's the one thing that toxic people do when they know you've figured them out. They transform your awakening journey into evidence of your mental deterioration. Every step of your evolution becomes proof of your regression. You're seeing patterns? You're obsessed. You're questioning behaviors? You're being paranoid. You're protecting your mental peace? You're isolating yourself unhealthily. According to Jung, this is the most masterful inversion the human mind can perform, taking the process of you becoming healthier and painting it as you becoming sicker. And here's where the most sinister part. They use your own growth as evidence against you. They take every insight you had, every boundary you set, every moment of clarity you experienced, and recontextualize it as symptoms of mental instability. Jung realized this is devastatingly effective because it contains fragments of truth distorted beyond recognition. But here's where Jung made his most disturbing discovery. They don't just attack your sanity, they weaponize your own healing process. You're going to therapy? See, I told you that you had problems. You're reading about healthy relationships? You're obsessed with finding flaws in people. You're learning about manipulation? You've become a paranoid internet psychologist. Every tool you use to heal becomes a weapon they use against you. Jung called this reverse therapeutic sabotage, transforming the healing process into evidence of disease.
Jung said, reality is that which continues to exist even when you stop believing in it. But what happens when someone systematically tries to destroy your perception of reality? Here's where their strategy becomes truly diabolical. They're not just trying to control how others see you, they're trying to control how you see yourself. Jung discovered that this creates what he called the war for reality, a psychological battle where your sanity becomes the disputed territory. But there's something even more sinister. Jung realized that they don't do this alone. They recruit others to their version of reality. They plant seeds of doubt about you with close people. They tell distorted versions of events where you're always the aggressor. They create a collective narrative where you're the problem. And the more people believe their version, the more you begin to doubt your own. Jung discovered that this creates a devastating effect. You begin to question your own perception of reality. Maybe I really am being paranoid. Maybe I really am exaggerating. Maybe they're right about me. This is their final victory, making you believe that your clarity about them is actually your confusion about yourself. Jung called this psychological colonization, when their version of reality begins to occupy space in your mind. Jung understood something fundamental about psychological protection. The best defense against gaslighting isn't argumentation, It's unshakable confidence in your own perception. Toxic people can only rewrite your reality if you allow them to have authority over your experience. Jung discovered that emotionally mature people develop what he called narrative immunity, the ability to maintain their version of reality even when systematically attacked. This immunity comes from understanding that when someone tries to convince you that your sanity is insanity, that's definitive proof that you were right about them from the beginning. If they were genuine, they would work to understand your perspective. If they were healthy, they would respect your boundaries. If they were honest, they wouldn't need to rewrite history. Their need to make you seem crazy is the clearest confession of their toxicity. Jung realized this understanding is liberating. When you understand that their attacks on your sanity are actually validations of your clarity, you become immune to their manipulation. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." And when you awaken to someone's nature, when you finally see through the masks and manipulations, remember, their reaction to your clarity is the final confirmation that you were right. That night, watching the flames dance, a final truth was revealed. Healthy people celebrate when you grow. Toxic people work to convince you that your growth is your ruin. The one thing they do, transforming your sanity into evidence of insanity, is also the clearest evidence of the sanity you've developed. Because only someone who is truly awakened can threaten someone who is still sleeping so much. That night, I understood that when they attack your perception of reality, it's because your reality has become a threat to their fiction, and that the most dangerous person to a manipulator is someone who can no longer be manipulated. And since then, whenever the world weighs heavy, I return to the fire. See you soon.